Hey everyone, have you ever tried to learn how to code but got stuck? In my new Python programming class, we're going to break that loop. This course is primarily focused on people who are complete beginners, so don't worry if you don't have any background. This course is different than other courses because we're going to teach you to think like a programmer and solve problems like a robot. So let's get started. Okay, so last time we were able to crack Caesar's cipher, which is great. That means it's not so great if you're the person who's sending the message. It's great if we're just trying to find the message. But in general, this kind of goes full circle, right? We used programming both to encrypt and decrypt the messages, and then using that same framework, we were able to crack something that we know used Caesar's cipher. Now, the thing I'm going to talk about here is how do we make what we already have done easier for us in the future? There's a couple of things here that we've done that probably could be made a little bit easier. And I'm going to specify and focus in on this function, right? So pretty much anywhere, there's a fundamental tenet of programming where pretty much anywhere where you are repeating yourself or you find yourself writing a lot of stuff over and over, you're probably doing it maybe not wrong, but there's probably a better way to do it, right? In general, in programming, if you find yourself writing something over and over again, there's usually a better way to do it. And for the most part, a lot of what we've done here is following a framework of making functions to do certain things so we can use them later. So in general, the way I'm teaching this, we're trying to avoid writing the same thing over and over just by its nature. But there's certain things that might be a little bit hard to understand how you could do. And just to circle back to dictionaries. So dictionaries are very important. You can use them in a lot of situations. We use that here, but it was relatively simple. It was just to translate from letters to numbers and numbers to letters. But to create this dictionary, the cool thing about Python and programming is that you can create dictionaries and lists and other values by actually in a programmatic way itself, right? So rather than us having to write this out, we can actually programmatically do this. So that's what we're going to focus on here. And we're going to focus as well on importing from other libraries or other packages in Python. So a package in Python could be a third-party package, or it could be a library that's in a part of Python, but not part of the base distribution. When I say base distribution, when we're starting this notebook or when we use Python, everybody's Python is going to have some basic functionality. They're going to have for loops. They're going to have if statements. They're going to have print. They're going to have everything we've done up until now. You can do in any version of Python in existence. In a version of Python 3, at least. That's the version of Python. However, there are some things that you need to import either from third-party packages. So maybe there's some guy on the internet made this really cool thing that you can use and you want to use that you would have to import into your notebook. Or maybe there's other things that you probably don't want to use every time you use Python, but they're specific. So they're specific to a particular problem. In this case, we have the latter, right? Everybody's Python, if you install a modern version of Python 3, most versions of Python 3 are going to have this library called string, but it's not automatically loaded, so you have to import things from it. When I say import, we're going to start using code that's from something outside of the regular use cases of Python. So to actually do this, we write import string. So when we do this, we're importing and it will work, right? You can't just write import anything, right? So if I write import anything, it's going to say module not found, right? So this is a module. We're importing a module into our notebook or into our Python script that we're going to be able to use. And there's specific ones that have specific names. To give you a couple of examples, OS is another important module that we'll use at some point. Sys is another one. So there's a lot of them that have specific names. What their exact use cases aren't too important until you need to use them. So you'll find out what you need to use as you need to use them. And these all generally come with Python. Then there are other types of packages that don't come with Python that you'd have to install from the internet. And that's a whole other thing. We're not going to talk about that right now. But anyway, why I brought this up was because I wanted to import this module here, string. So what do we want from string? This big guy, right? These two big guys, really. I want to talk a little bit about this dictionary we have in here, this letter to number dictionary, right? Like this works. And as I mentioned before, with dictionaries, you can use these close brackets to access a particular key in that dictionary. So if I wanted to access A, I'll do this. If I wanted to access L, I could do this. So the way it works, again, is we look up a key. So I look up A and it returns what's associated with A. In that case, it would be 0. Here, we would do the same thing for L. So I look up L inside of this dictionary. I return what's associated with it, which is 11, and I find 11. So that's the way the dictionary is going to work. But we'd like to have a better way of creating this. And you can imagine, what information are we using here? We're using the letters of the alphabet and their position relative to the actual numbers, relative to the first letter, right? So A0, B1. Turns out that we can actually use, Python already has a notion of all of the uppercase letters in this module that we just imported, string, right? So to use things from string, we can write string and then type dot. And then I'm going to introduce you to something I haven't mentioned yet, but is generally pretty useful. If you hit tab, it's going to show us a whole bunch of things that are available within string. So tab is basically like autocomplete, and it'll give you a bunch of things that you can use that it's basically found inside of this object. So here, the ones that I want to focus on are these top 3, ACII, letters, lowercase, uppercase. We're going to use uppercase, and let's just take a look at what this is. These are all the uppercase letters. So this is exactly what we want, right? We have all the uppercase letters in the alphabet. So we're going to make a dictionary using all these letters in the alphabet. The way we're going to do that is we're going to first make a dictionary. We're going to call this letters to number, same thing. And we're going to set it equal to an empty dictionary, the 2 curly brackets. This is an empty dictionary, which means there's nothing in it. It works like a dictionary, but there's nothing in it. Then we're going to use a for loop again. We're going to say for C in string.asci uppercase. First, let's just print it out so we remember what this is going to do. So it's going to print out every single letter here, right? So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start updating this dictionary ourselves, right? So just like we did before with the string and what we've showed before with the number, we can also start updating this dictionary for each value in this string of characters, right? So for each character, we want to say the key is the letter, and the number, we want to be the number in that list, or like the position in this string, right? So A would be 0, B would be 1, and so on. It's actually a very specific thing in Python. We can use something called enumerate. It's easier to show. It's easier done than said. So I'm going to do this, print I. So there's 2 values in this enumerate. There's the position and then the actual value. When you write enumerate over a list, it will have a tuple, is what this is called, but it's basically 2 values. The first is the position in the list, and the second is the actual value. To make this a little clearer, let's say position, in this case, is a string. It would work with lists as well, and value. So let's do this, and then I'm going to put these guys around. I love doing this because I think it makes it easier to see what's actually going on. Position in the string, it was 0, and the value is A. Position string is 1, value is B. So it's going through each of these and just saying which number position it is in this string. And as I mentioned before, you can do the same thing with a list. So if I said favorite teams, if you remember before, we had favorite teams as a list. And we said New York Giants. I could also do for I, T in enumerate favorite teams, print I and print T. Similar deal. I could just say print position in list. And I could say value. If we look at this, we're going to get the same idea, right? Position in list 0, New York Giants. Position in list 1, New York Jets. Position in list 2, Buffalo Bills. Okay, so this is the general idea. We're doing the same thing with the string. So we can do this with strings and with lists. And this enumerate function is very useful for this particular thing because there's a lot of situations you might find yourself in where you are going to want to not only know what the value is, but also know where in that list or a character string that value lies. Okay, so that said, very specifically right now, we have all the information we need, right? Because this is exactly what this dictionary is. It's a dictionary of the key and the position in this particular string, right? So A is associated with 0, B is associated with 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to say letter to number, and we're going to set the key, right? So normally when we did this before, we grab the key, right? We're saying like A is the key we want, and we want to get the value for it. You can also set the value in a dictionary by actually assigning it. So in this case, letter to number C is equal to I, which will set the characters as the key and I as the value in that dictionary. Okay, so again, I think it's a little bit easier to show than to say. So I'm going to do this, and then every single time I'm going to print out this dictionary so you can see what happens. Okay, so every single time I'm iterating through this, it's adding a new key to the dictionary and adding a value associated with it. In fact, let me just add some other tests. So adding key, say C, and I say adding value, and I'm going to say I. So I'm going to print out everything that's happening, again, just so we can see what's going on under the hood. I think this is a very useful way to do. So the first step, I add key A, and I'm adding value 0, and then that's what it is in the dictionary. Then I add key B, I add value 1. It's going to have the same value it had from the last time in the dictionary because I already added it, plus this new value for B, and then for C, and then for D, and then for E, and then for F, and so on and so forth, all the way up until we have this dictionary, which, lo and behold, is exactly this dictionary. So let's go through it again. We go through every value in this string that we found from this library string, which is very useful for things like this, letters of the alphabet and so on. For every character, or every letter in this string, we take the position in that list in this string, this overall string, and associate it with the letter in this exact way. A is 0, B is 1, C is 2, by assigning the key in that dictionary to that value. And you can set key and value pairs in this way as well, iteratively, after you've defined the dictionary. So this is a very useful thing to do because we can just build and grow this dictionary. And using this method, we were able to create this overall dictionary in a similar way to what we had done here, right? That's an overview of what we've done, and I think it's really pretty powerful, right? So let's get rid of all of this and just take a look at what this letter to number dictionary looks like now. So this is exactly the same dictionary we had up here, except now, instead of having to write all of this out, we have 3 lines of code that creates this dictionary for us. And there's even better ways of doing this. I'm not going to go into that right now, but I'll cover it in the next 2 videos, which are optional. But you can create your own dictionaries in an iterative way. And generally, if you find yourself writing something out a million times, there's probably a better way to do it. That said, if it's too difficult to think of how you're going to do something like this, it's better to write it out yourself and test it in maybe the less efficient way or the less good way, especially when you're starting out, because you're still going to be able to do it. It just might be a little bit nasty, right? It might not be the nicest or the prettiest way, but you'll still get there. And then I'd recommend doing what we're doing in these videos, going back and seeing, is there any way I could make this better? And this is one of those things that if you see it, you're doing a lot of your own work where you're having to write everything in, there's probably a little bit of a better way to do it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this dictionary, we're going to put it back up in here. So this translate letter to number. And now we're just going to put this in here. We're going to replace that long dictionary with these 3 lines of code. And isn't this nice, right? So now you'll be able to generate that dictionary yourself every single time, and you don't have to worry about writing this out. So it's much, much easier, much nicer to handle. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything. That's all we're going to do in this video. The next video, I'm going to talk about next 2 videos are going to be some optional, but a little bit more advanced topics. The next one is going to talk about comprehensions, which is an even easier way to write these 3 lines of code. Not going to be too long. It might be nice to jump in. It is a little confusing and not necessary to learn Python, but if you're up for the challenge, that's the next video. And then after that, we're going to talk about cracking a general monoalphabetic substitution cipher, I should say, which is a generalization of the problem we've had before. And we're going to be able to crack that, which is pretty cool. You'll be able to feel like you're a hacker. It's a little bit more advanced than what we've been doing, but it's only going to be using everything you've learned so far. So it's nothing new, but just wanted to introduce you to that as well and leave that up to you if you wanted to do it. Okay, thanks. See you in the next videos.